This week's channel message from the angels connects the dots between many of the concepts they've been sharing with us about how we are going to be released from our karma, how we're meant to be in the energy of allowing, of unity, and how all these things work together to create a new experience, what our new state of consciousness actually is. So welcome back to my channel, you guys. I am super excited to be sharing this week's message with you. And to those of you who are new, welcome. My name is Ann Tucker. I am a trance channel. I channel from the angelic realm, and I do that by going into a deep meditative state. And from there, I raise my awareness up as high as I can go. I go a little higher, I connect, and then I bring through messages and healing that I share here with you guys on YouTube. And like I was saying, this week's message is it is helping us to draw connections. It's sort of like the next one, in a long series of messages they've been giving us about the shift in consciousness. But each time they go a little deeper and help us to understand and connect these different concepts together. This is one of those that, for me, it was like turning on a light bulb. But really, I find this message to be really, really helpful. It's talking about how the way we have been living in a karmic construct, how we have been experiencing, how it will change, and how the concept of unity makes it different, how that's a core piece of what life will be without karma. So I think you guys are going to love it. It's a beautiful, beautiful message. Some of the language that they use in this one is just super poetic. So like I said, very excited to share it with you. So, and I'm calling this message Living Without Suffering. So let's go ahead and dig in. They say, the substance of where you are is changing substantially now. The practice of keeping yourselves in wonder, in acceptance, in the knowing that all forms of and by yourselves, these maintain your fluidity in the times now that are coming. We speak to you now of the changing circumstances that you are in, the heaviness that bridges your expectations, the falling shadow that heaves your mind into the formation of fear and rigidity is peeling away the layers of your own soul's injustices. The forms and formations by which you have denigrated the self. Through multiple incarnations, you have held rigidity, and the time is now to structure yourselves differently. There is within yourselves an allowance, a willingness to take on what shall not be compiled of truisms, a sense of yourself, a sense of self as solely and purposefully at the center of all wrongdoing. The sense of yourself as having been instructive and instrumental, yes, in your own peaceful undertakings, but also as the witness and bearer of things that have been painful, of hardships, of ways in which you have grown. These substantial iterations of experience have left upon you a wishful desire to be changed, to do differently, to come to this earth and play a role in a space that re-encounters these hardships, that plays them now into a form for better understanding, for more clarity, to release yourselves from these patternings, to allow yourselves to feel these hardships are done, are through. You're ready. We say the time is now for these in your passing to be passed on, to be left in your trajectory, to find in yourselves a willingness to open and reframe what has happened in the past and past keeping, to feel in yourselves and your hearts an opening toward yourself, to feel you are whole in each encounter, in each life, in each blessing. The knowledge of who you are, what you are, is expanding. See your own truth in your capacity for hardship. See how you have been unveiled by these experiences. What is in keeping with your own understanding, your own knowledge of how you would be and perform a life under each circumstance. These hardships are formative to the person you are. The soul's blessings come in the form of riddles to be made for the purpose of digestion, made for the encounter of each self that you are, indeterminate at birth and complex in its possibilities. And through the process of life, you unravel and unfurl the blossoms within you. These cannot be constructed by simple appreciation, but must be found and unearthed in the process of living. The process thus far has been one of hardship and formation by trial. But these times coming, the riddle moves differently. It becomes a solving that can be done without the construct of painful separation. It can be done in union and the blessing of community and oneness. Within this new frame of reference, all hardship is seen differently. It becomes a form by which you can join with all that is. It becomes a method by which you experience truth. It forms you no less purposefully, no less meaningfully, but without the same suffering. For suffering is the absence of self and soul. Separation is what creates hardship, the sense of loss and impermanence of self. What humanity knows of living is an experience formed under the umbrella of suffering and separation from what you are, from oneness, from the capacity to love each other. In this new context of living, the great trials of life are opened to the self for the enjoyment of loving purposefully what you are, for the ability to see your soul and self as it opens and reveals its many convoluted ways of being. You come to terms with what you are, and through this growth and endowment of living, you become brighter. When solitude riddles you no more, the blessings of what you are encountered in the wholeness of communal understanding, and you are witnessed in your unfolding. So yeah, I just feel like this message, it just is like, as you keep going, it just gets like deeper and cooler and deeper and cooler. As I was reading it, I'm like, ooh, I love this. I couldn't wait to share it with you guys. So this message is really about, like, they've been saying that it's the end of karma, right? They've been telling us that. They've been saying like you guys are done with karma, but like how? And what does that mean? And what is our new life like if we're not living a karmic experience? And how do we keep growing, right? Is this still, like, we're still in this, it's no longer this kind of 3D construct. It's not a karmic construct. How do we see ourselves? How do we expand? So here, that is what they're answering. And it kind of ties together all these different pieces. They've been giving us messages about like how, like in the beginning, they reference like how they've been telling us this new state of being that we're supposed to be in, where we're kind of in very much in the present moment, living into the future, like living like in anticipation, in joyful anticipation of the next instant, right? And sort of leaning into the now. And in wonder and acceptance, right? All of this. And so they're kind of touching on all the things we're supposed to embody. And this concept of unity and oneness, well, how does that then impact karma? How does that impact our experience of learning? So this, to me, this message connects those dots in a really, really beautiful way. So yeah, so you guys want to go ahead and dig into it? Let's do it. Myrna joined us. Good morning. Okay, good. That's great. I'm glad the audio is working again now. That's super. So beautiful, says Rebecca. Yeah, this really, the language here is just gorgeous. And there's a thing they do here on the second page, which is like, so them. And I cannot wait to get to that part to share it with you, because it's one of their, like, we see it in 15 different lenses, and it's cool. You'll see. And Lindsay says, love the communal witnessing. I know. Yeah, and that, I think that's the cool part about this idea that growth changes from one where we are growing through separation to one where we're growing through unity. And I think that is the shift in consciousness that we're trying to make. Like that, in a nutshell, is what we're trying to become in terms of where humanity is meant to be in the future, what we're trying to grow into. Yeah, very, very different. So the first paragraph, I feel like they've been doing recently, is sort of a recap of things they've been saying. They say the substance of where you are is changing substantially now. And they're really now, like this time is now. A lot is happening. Like we're right. They keep saying we're on the doorway. We're right in the middle of it. Like we're in the like, and we're heading into, crunchier and crunchier times. And they're saying it's been right. It's been like chaotic in the world. But they're saying, so the substance of where you are is changing substantially now. So this is not just our environment and the stuff around us, but the energy around us is like supercharged. They say the practice of keeping yourselves in wonder, in acceptance, in the knowing that all forms of and by yourselves, knowing that all forms of and by yourselves. So these are three concepts that they're wanting us to be aware of, right? Keeping ourselves in wonder, which is that sense of being totally open to seeing, to living in the present moment, to seeing things as they really are, not living in our preconceived ideas, not living in patterns, not going through life on automatic pilot, but living in wonder. That idea of like seeing things through the eyes of a child is kind of, that's the state we're trying to get to, of coming into each moment like a new birth, right? And that's the goal of what we're trying to achieve. So keeping yourselves in wonder. And then the second thing is in acceptance. So this is that idea that yes, change is coming. They don't want us to be looking backwards saying, wait a minute, I want to get that back. How do I go back to what I had, this thing that just got taken away? How do I reclaim that? They're saying, nope, in acceptance. Recognize that you have to let go of something to make space for something better. So if there's a sense of loss, recognize that it is just the indication that something better is on the way, and don't focus on what you lost. Don't focus on it. It's be in acceptance. So that's part of this being in flow, being in the rhythm of the change, letting ourselves be moved with the wave, not fighting the wave. So we're trying to do. So in wonder, in acceptance. And then the third concept is in the knowing that all forms of and by yourselves. So this is something that's sort of like the underlying premise of being on the spiritual path. How do you know you're on the spiritual path? Is because you no longer look outside of yourself to say, who did this to me? You instead say, what would I have to believe to create this? How did something in me, what is this showing me about myself? Like it becomes self-referential rather than seeing yourself as the victim of reality. You see yourself as the creator of reality. And so growth becomes a constant feedback to yourself, and you grow through every experience, right? So that these are three core concepts they want us to be really present to: being in wonder, being in acceptance, and then being aware that everything forms by and of ourselves, right? So these are three things. So this, like I said, first paragraph is a recap. Then they say, these maintain your fluidity in the times now that are coming. So these are three main concepts they want us to really have top of mind as we're heading into what's coming, right? So just a very beautiful 3 lines, say it in 3 lines, 3 of the most profound concepts of spirituality. Just throw them out there, you know what I mean? So that's that. All right. So then next paragraph, they say, we speak to you now of the changing circumstances that you are in. So it's like, okay, great. Now they're going to tell us, what are these changing circumstances? They say the heaviness that bridges your expectation, the falling shadow that heaves your mind into the formation of fear and rigidity. So this is the understanding that we're living in really chaotic times, right? And we have an anticipation. There's this general bubbling up in the world that there's this underlying fear that's like everybody feels things are changing. Everybody feels like, and it's like everybody's thinking it's going to be something different. It's going to be, the political crisis, banking crisis, mortgage crisis. It's like debt crisis. It's like everything is, it's going to be the volcanoes going off. It's going to be, mass violence. It's war. It's, what I mean? Which thing is it? Everybody's pointing in a different direction. The angels have said in a past message that it is all of these things, that it's everything. It's the constant stretching of the rubber band. And it's the fact that these go on for so long that our systems, our structures can no longer hold. Everybody's trying to ride it out, right? All of our structures are trying to ride it out, hoping that the ship will right itself. And the message is that they've said is basically it just goes on longer than all of our structures think it will. But that is that feeling that people have, that there is, you're saying lions and tigers and bears. That's exactly right. That we feel this thing coming up. And here's an interesting thing is that when I first started channeling messages from the angels, and the first messages they came out with were some of these really heavy ones about the earth rift and all this kind of stuff. And I think I told you guys I did not want to share it because I was like, I don't want to be the gloom and doom person. But the thing that got me to share it was when I realized, and I heard from a friend, she was telling me that one of her clients already knew about all this stuff. But she didn't know what it was. She felt it. She had this inexplicable feeling of dread, and and she was naming all these things, and I had just been told what it was. And I just realized, you know what? Everybody already feels it at some level. And so I think there's the real effect of the chaos in the world, the polycrisis, right, in the world, of all these different things that are happening. And then there's the subtle layer of the energy that we all feel, of this rising, right, that we feel, that feels like pressure. It feels like, so that when we might be looking out into the world for what's causing that emotion, what's causing that feeling, that discomfort inside of us. But whatever it is, that is creating, right, the heaviness that bridges your expectation. We have this expectation, like the next shoe is going to drop. What is it? It's a heaviness, right? The falling shadow that heaves your mind into the formation of fear and rigidity. Keyword, rigidity, right? So this is that feeling that there's like something coming, and it's creating fear in us, and the rigidity. They're saying it is peeling away the layers of your own soul's injustices. So I had to just break this sentence down because there's so much in it. But yeah, so this heaviness, the fear that we're going through, is peeling away the layers of our own soul's injustices. So what is that? What are our soul's injustices? They are the ways in which we have judged ourselves, right? Our soul's injustices is ways that we've judged. So what they're saying there is there's no way in which we are meant to be judged. Any judgment against us is an injustice, because we're not meant to be judged. We're meant to learn and to understand ourselves. And so they're saying that as we are going through these hardships, we are confronting our soul's injustices and peeling away the layers to our healing. That's what this paragraph is saying. The forms and formations by which you have denigrated the self. So this is what they mean by the soul's injustices, are the forms and formations that by which you have denigrated by self. In other words, put yourself down, limited yourself, right? Through multiple incarnations, you have held rigidity. And the time is now to structure yourselves differently. So rigidity is resistance, right? Resistance to where we feel like we're not good enough, we're not worthy, we're not capable, we doubt ourselves, right? This is our rigidity, where we say, I can't do that, right? Nope, I'm afraid, I don't think I'm going to succeed, I'm going to fail, whatever it is. Those are our rigidities, where we're not in the flow of what's moving through us, where we see something come up and we have fear that it's going to hurt us, that we're not going to be capable, that if we lose something, we won't be able to build it back again, right? It's that feeling of self-doubt, self-limitation, right? With the ways in which we denigrate ourselves, rather than understanding we are the creator of our own universe, that, as they said above, knowing that all forms of and by yourself. So we shouldn't fear any kind of loss, because everything forms by us. If we are carrying light inside of us, we're going to experience light. So, and I feel like I'm going through this, like there's just so many layers here. So if I'm going too fast or covering too many topics at once, someone give me a little sign here, because I feel like there's just a lot in here, and everything refers back to messages that we've got in the past. But yeah, they're packing it into these paragraphs. So they say, through multiple incarnations, so multiple lives, you have held rigidity. That rigidity is the karma that we have, which karma, by my definition, is self-judgment, is the ways that we have judged ourselves and denigrated ourselves, right? So we have held this rigidity, resistance to the flow, our resistance to what is meant to move through us, that comes from fear, etc. And the time is now to structure yourselves differently. Why? Because we're meant to be in flow. In this new state of consciousness, we're meant to be in flow. All right. So the next paragraph, they say, there is within yourselves an allowance. And this paragraph is really about saying how we have been willing, or that our natural way of being in the world up until now has been to blame ourselves, to assume, like, think about yourself as a child, that, when you're an infant and something goes wrong with your parents, if your parents feel anxious, you automatically think, oh my gosh, I am not a good enough child, right? Whatever it is I'm doing is making my parents stressed. So this is the perspective that we have in a lot of things. We walk into a room, if somebody's grumpy, we think they're grumpy towards us, right? We think, oh my gosh, they're mad at me for some reason. What did I say? When chances are it has nothing to do with you. So this is a way of moving through the world, is we refer everything back to ourselves and said, oh, I should have been different, done different, whatever, right? That's what this paragraph is talking about. They say, there is within yourselves an allowance, a willingness to take on what shall not be compiled of truisms. a sense of self as solely and purposefully at the center of all wrongdoing. So they're saying this is basically saying that idea that we go into a situation and we automatically judge ourselves. The first thing we look at is, we have a negative interaction and we walk away kicking ourselves. I should have said this, or I should have done this, or, oh man, I really blew it, whatever it is, right? Or this person is having a hard time. Somehow we take it on and put ourselves at the center of it. And so they're saying that we have this willingness, right, to take on what shall not be compiled of truism. So they're saying it's not true, that we're willing to take on things that are made up of a bunch of stuff we just made up. We're willing to make it up in our own mind and blame ourselves, to put ourselves at the center of anything that goes wrong. They say the sense of yourself as having been instructive and instrumental, yes, in your own peaceful undertakings. So they're saying, yes, we give ourselves credit for the good things, but also as the witness and bearer of things that have been painful, right, of hardships. So it's really about saying, okay, this we focus on the negative hardships in our life. They say of ways in which you have grown. These, and I like that they add that, and they're right there as a reference. They never want us to forget, even as they're talking about the fact that we put ourselves in the center, they don't want us to forget that it is always for our own growth, right? They say these substantial iterations of experience have left upon you a wishful desire to be changed, to do differently. So to come to this earth and to play a role in a space that re-encounters these hardships. So they're really talking about here about once we cross over and we're on the other side and we go back and we look at our life and we go through the life review and we say, wow, I did something that I wish I had done differently. I should have been kinder to this person, or I should have been bolder and braver. I should have been out there using my gifts, whatever it is. We judge ourselves and said, shoulda, coulda, woulda done it different. And then they say, great, okay, if you feel that, that's your karma, right? You can come back another life and you can try again. And we're going to put you back into another life that triggers you in the exact same way, that gives you the opportunity to work through those exact issues, right? That gives you the opportunity to redo. And sometimes it's with some of the same players. Sometimes the person who was your mom or your dad in that life becomes your child in this life, right? Or becomes your aunt or your uncle or your boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever, right? That you sometimes move through life in cycles with similar soul groups. But so you're put into similar situations, similar players to work out the things that you wish you had done differently. So that the substantial iteration, so these really impactful lives, the impactful iterations of experience have left upon you a wishful desire to be changed, to do differently, to come to this earth and to play a role in a space that re-encounters these hardships, that plays them now into a form for better understanding, for more clarity, to release yourselves from these patternings. So that's kind of how it's been in the past, right? They say to allow yourselves to feel these hardships are done, are through. So that's they're really sort of spelling out, this is how it's been up until now, this karmic existence. Then they go next paragraph, they say, you're ready. We say the time is now for these in your passing to be passed on, to be left in your trajectory. So they're saying, okay, all this idea of self-judgment, time to leave it behind. That's good. That's really good news. They say to find in yourselves a willingness to open and reframe what has happened in the past and past keeping. And so this is interesting. They don't just say close the door on it and forget it. They say find in yourselves a willingness, number one, willing, that we have to be, and willingness has to be aware that this is a choice that we have to make, right? To open and reframe what has happened in the past. So this isn't a matter of just brushing it under the rug or just saying, okay, I'm just gonna feel happy. I'm gonna smile and pretend that everything is good. They're saying, no, we have to open what it was before and reframe it. That we have to bring everything up to the surface and heal it and move through it. So that's the process. It's a willingness, a conscious decision, a conscious choice to see ourselves and our reality, to open those wounds, to experience them, and to reframe them, which is exactly the work we've been doing in Soul Convergence, is this idea of dredge it up, go deep as you can, and then work through it, reframe it, and move through it. Yeah. So what has happened in the past and past keeping. To feel in yourselves and your hearts an opening toward yourself. So this is really about self-forgiveness, for letting go of our self-judgment and an opening toward yourself, right? To feel you are whole in each encounter, in each life, in each blessing. So I love that they're not saying, there's the idea of being whole. What is wholeness? What does it mean to incorporate more of our higher self? It means to let go of what they said in the beginning, rigidity. It is resistance. It is self-denigration, the ways in which we think and we choose to believe that we are not as amazing as we really are, right? That we put ourselves down and we doubt ourselves. And so this is, how do we become whole, is by letting go of that rigidity, of our resistance to the natural flow of divine energy that wants to come through us. That's how we become whole. It's the letting in, and the only way to do that is to process, to work through, to open and process all of these places where we have judged ourselves. Each one is an experience that we've been through where we came to a conclusion about ourselves. And we have to open each one and look at it and let it come up. Really appreciate, acknowledge the feelings and let them be moved, right? So this is the process of release. How do we get there? And you're saying that's really good news. Really, really don't like doing that all again. I know. It's like all the stuff you do in this life. You're like, I don't want to come back for that. I totally get it. Yeah. And you're saying happy December. Happy December. Yeah, it is December 1st. So, okay, so the next paragraph, they say the knowledge of who you are, what you are, is expanding. And so this is not just, I think this is not just the sort of the general way of learning through life. This is, I think, part of the shift in consciousness is that we are becoming more aware of our divine self. We're becoming more aware of our broader capacities. And so the knowledge of who you are, of what you are, is expanding. It's almost like the veil is thinning. We're starting to see ourselves as divine creators. They say, see your own truth in your capacity for hardship. So this is now they're emphasizing, see your own truth in your capacity for hardship. See how you have been unveiled by these experiences. So they're really urging us to encounter and work through our healing. Right now, they're saying what is in keeping with your own understanding, your own knowledge of how you would be and perform a life under each circumstance. These hardships are formative to the person that you are. So this is just, they're urging us, saying, yes, do the work, do the work now. Really see what's going on around you, and then always look back and say, okay, how do I grow through this? What is this showing me about myself? It's always that question: what would I have to believe in order for this to be happening to me? Like how, for me, it's always happening for me. All right, the next paragraph, and now we're getting, this one little reference that I just love. They're saying the soul's blessings come in the form of riddles made for the purpose of digestion. So love that. So the soul's blessings come in the form of riddles. So a riddle is a blessing. So it's almost like, imagine it. We always talk about that. Imagine if you came to Earth and you had the whole understanding of what your whole life was going to be before you got here. Like you got to read the end of the book before you got here, and how incredibly boring that would be. You'd literally just be moving through it. It'd be like you had already watched the movie 20 times, and you'd kind of like, getting up to go to the bathroom and eating popcorn and, doing your email while the movie was on, because you're like, I already know what's coming. So here it's like, no, it's a riddle. It's a puzzle. Like, what's going to happen? You know what I mean? We don't know. We have the veil to protect us, to keep it engaging. The soul's blessings. This is the blessing, right? The soul's blessing come in the form of riddles made for the purpose of digestion. So, which I love that too, because it's like, it's meant to be something that we don't just take a bite up and throw away. We have to move it through the process. Digestion, the whole process of digestion, it takes time, right? It goes through stages as it goes down into the stomach, and and each layer of the digestion does something different. We are meant to process and to understand, and what happens in digestion is we pull out the nutrients, right? And we take the waste and we let it go. So this is what we're meant to do with our life, is we're meant to process, to digest our experience, and to pull out the wisdom, pull out the blessings, pull out the good stuff, and let anything that's not in our highest and best to just poop it out. Just let it out. And that's the idea. So this is the riddles made for the purpose of digestion, made for the encounter of each self that you are. And then here, I love this. Made for the encounter of each self that you are, indeterminate at birth and complex in its possibilities. So this is, of course, this is an angel word, so it has many layers. So made for the encounter of each self that you are, indeterminate at birth. So in other words, what they're saying is that the person that we're going to become is not a known thing, that we are creating ourselves. So we think a lot of times that we're trying to uncover ourselves and to see who we really are and all this kind of stuff. But the truth is that we are constantly changing, that the person that you are right now has never existed before, and that you are different in this moment than you were yesterday, because the world that you experience, your life changed you. So the soul, your higher self, has become different, has changed because of your experiences in the last 24 hours. So, and that path that you take, the way that you change is unknown. So it's literally like you are this amazing mystery that's unfolding and becoming different in every moment. That as you experience your world, it's like, imagine that and this is perfect, but imagine that you're a flower that's blooming, but nobody knows what color you're going to come up with next, or what kind of a petal, or what kind of a smell. It's like, it's constantly changing. And so this is indeterminate at birth. So it's this riddle, the mystery is you, right? The mystery of who you are going to become. How are you going to grow? What choices are you going to make? How are you going to evolve? Right? And this is the idea. That you were made for the encounter of each self that you are. Every moment, every part of yourself, as you grow, you create. Each self is like a living instantiation of you. Right? Indeterminate at birth and complex in its possibilities. So you could go a million different ways. So here's what's really cool about the word indeterminate. So of course I had to look it up. And indeterminate means not known in advance, or and it also means having an infinite number of solutions. So I love that. So it is that idea that you could grow in a million different ways. And it's totally unknown. Like so in other words, in the planning of your life, you may have planned out certain experiences, certain encounters, certain relationships to make sure that your life headed in a particular direction. But what you do with it is unknown, even in your birth plan. Like, it's going to be like, what do you do? How is he or she going to evolve, right? Or they, what are you going to do? And so that part it could be infinite, who you become. And that is not known in advance. So the next layer of this word, indeterminate, is it also is a reference to plants, and it's a reference to a type of growth. And when I looked it up, it was referring specifically, like they used as an example, tomato plants. Apparently, there's two different types of growth in tomatoes. You have determinate growth and indeterminate growth. And a determinate growth is when the plant gets up to a certain height, and then it kind of has a blossom on the top, or like a final expression of leaves, and then that's all it does. Indeterminate tomatoes and indeterminate growth is growth in which the main stem continues to elongate indefinitely, that there's no end to the growth. That's the type of tomato that the main stem will just keep going and going and going and going. So that is what they're saying, is that we are that there's no end to the infinite solutions, infinite possibilities, infinite branches of who you were going to become. But here's what's cool is then throughout the rest of the thing, they keep mentioning plants and blossoms. So it's just them being super clever, and I love it. So they say, made for the encounter of each self that you are, indeterminate at birth and complex in its possibilities. And through the process of life, you unravel and unfurl the blossoms within you. So I just love that right there, they reference the blossoms, like they're talking about, and I, of course, had no idea until I went and looked it up. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. I feel like they hide these little bits in there just for fun. And it's so cool. So they say these cannot be constructed by simple appreciation, but must be found and unearthed in the process of living. So in other words, you cannot have this way of growth of this indeterminate, constant expression, new expressions of who you are, just by simply looking at yourself. It has to be through contact with reality. It has to be through the process of living. It's almost like they say it takes two to tango, that in the process of creation has to have that duality. So in other words, being in isolation, you can't grow. It's only through the process of going out and having this dialogue, self and other, that you then begin to have the experience of growth. So you literally could, if you could freeze yourself and stop all growth by putting yourself in an isolation chamber and putting yourself on a shelf and saying, I'm going to interact with nothing. And that's a crazy thought, and I have seen that. I think I shared with you guys before that after my divorce, I didn't date for like 4 years, and I didn't have, I had healing dreams for a bit on other subjects, and then they stopped, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm done with healing, yay me. And then I started dating again. It was like, kapow, here's like, okay. And I had to work through all this whole nother round of issues around relationships, but they could not come up until I was engaged in dating, until I was engaged in relationship. And so in other words, they cannot be constructed by simple appreciation. I couldn't just heal it by thinking about it. You know what I mean? I couldn't just like do it in the nice way. I had to go out and actually dig in and encounter, right? It must be found and unearthed through the process of living. Yeah. And you're saying, I wonder if that's why I don't care for psychic readings. I enjoy the riddles. Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. And then you say that Lindsay says the angels like to remind me I like an adventure, like the riddles. Yeah, exactly. And Sherry says the isolation thing resonates big time. It is such an important one to remember, because it is, I think, very, very tempting for us to say, well, I'm just going to make my life easy, right? If I don't like something, I'm just going to avoid it. I'm just going to cut it out of my life. Well, it's one thing if you have already encountered it and healed it. But if we're avoiding it because we don't want to encounter it, right, then we're just not growing. So yeah, and we do have control over that. Like I could have just never dated again, you know what I mean? And then I would have just gone at the end of my life and I would have been like, I'm so awesome, I never have anything to heal. Right? But no, so it's a thing. We have to choose and say, yeah, I'm going to do the hard thing. I'm going to dig back in. I'm going to throw myself back in there and see what happens and let myself be, to face my junk. So, yeah. Okay, so now they go on, and like I said, this whole second half, I just love it. They say, and they're saying, Shanta says, they keep telling me to go outside. Yes, right? Yeah, that's the only way. We got to get out there. The process thus far has been one of hardship and formation by trial. But and this is the good news, you guys, these times coming, the riddle moves differently. It becomes a solving that can be done without the construct of painful separation. So this is the key. So they've been telling us that we will grow differently, that it won't be as painful, but they haven't really said how. Now they're telling us why and how it will be different, right? They're saying that it doesn't mean that we don't engage in life anymore. Not at all. They're saying we still have to engage in life, but it will feel different. And this is why. They say the riddle moves differently. It becomes a solving that can be done without the construct of painful separation. So separation is it. They're saying that is, so they've been telling us all this time, the movement to unity. And they've been two concepts. They've been talking about the elimination of karma and moving to unity. Here, they're bringing those two concepts together for the first time so that we can understand them in a new way. They're saying that separation is the thing that brings us hardship and suffering, which they've also said, but I never really made the connection between that and how we will end our karma. They say it can be done in union and the blessing of community and oneness. So healing is done in the blessing of community and oneness. When we encounter ourselves and we face our difficulties, we do it in the blessing of community and in union, right? In the blessing of community and oneness. So how will this feel? They say within this new frame of reference, all hardship is seen differently. And it really is, I think you have to really stretch to put yourself into a place. If you have ever been in a really difficult circumstance, if you've ever had a really hard time, like I think about for myself, this one is definitely going to make me choke up if I think about it. But I think about when I left my marriage and it was my second marriage. I had my daughter, who was then a late teenager, in her late teens. And we left that night together, and we didn't have a plan. We didn't know where we were going to go. She had to start school like a week later. So I just went to like a Residence Inn, and we brought as much stuff as we could. You know, what we wrote, I had her take as like everything of her possession. So we had a carload full of stuff. And we got one of those like rolling luggage trolleys. We brought it out to the car and loaded it up and brought it up to the room. We unloaded it. And then the two of us sat on the luggage carrier in the room and just sat there facing each other and just cried. And it was that feeling of her. It was amazing to have my daughter, and she was like ready and excited for this change. And to have her be there with me, right? And to experience that with me and to hold that space for me and for both of us. Like, it was such an amazing experience, right? It was this, I think that is what they're saying, that without the construct of painful separation, right? In a new frame, the blessing of community and oneness, of unity. So to go through that incredibly difficult thing, but to be with someone who I love and who loves me so completely, that it was such an incredible thing. And it really changed it. Like, imagine what that experience would have been if I had done it by myself, right? And how hard it would have been by myself. That it was hardly suffering to do it with somebody, to do it with my daughter, is really amazing. And not to say that it wasn't a hard process, because a divorce is always awful, 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 but very, very different that first night to have it be with her. And the angels say, within this new frame of reference, all hardship is seen differently. And I definitely relate to that. It becomes a form by which you can join with all that is. It becomes a method by which you experience truth. And so think about that. Like, if you've ever been in a place to hold space like that for someone, or if someone has ever held space for you, how being in that space of vulnerability where it's like someone can really get to know you in those moments. Like, it's like your heart is open, right? That somebody steps in and joins you and sees you without the sort of the mask that we put on in daily life, without our scripts, or without the busyness where we normally, like, when you're going through hardship, or when someone goes through hardship, it's like you are there. And so we have that experience, that ability, right? A method by which you experience truth, right? And that you join with all that is. So it's like this union. You form a union with other people. And that is not to say that we're meant to go through life just like weeping all the time. Like, that's not, like, we can feel the same connection through joy and through excitement, and to share excitement over something brings the same connection. When you're, like, say you're working on a project with someone, or you're building something together, and that same thing, you can have the same form of connection between two people, where you're just really in the same, thinking, where you're finishing each other's thoughts. And, like, that's an amazing experience of connection. But this is how we experience ourselves in a new way, where it's very, very different. And it doesn't feel like suffering when you're not doing it by yourself. And I think that is the thing. That is it. Like, wow. And I don't know why I never got it before, but to me, this connects the dots in a way that I feel like I'm getting it. Hopefully you guys are feeling it too, but I just feel like for me, this is like bing, like light bulb just turned on. Yeah. And you're saying, and Linda saying, yes, I have been in a period of looking within, but I know the message I'm receiving is to start moving, engaging with others, and trying new things. This message keeps on coming. Fantastic. Yes, absolutely, Linda. And you're saying, what a beautiful and difficult process doing it together. Yes, 100%. Yes, it was. And I am so grateful for everything for that night, and for everything that's transpired since. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So they go on to say, next paragraph, they say, it forms you no less purposefully, no less meaningfully, but without the same suffering. For suffering is the absence of self and soul. Separation is what creates hardship. So this is just, I feel like this is really big. It is, what is it that makes things painful? It's being alone in our pain. It's feeling unseen, not understood in our pain, right? And when we're in, so you can have pain. They're saying in this new vibration, it doesn't mean that we don't feel sad. It means that when we feel sad, we feel seen, and we have other people that experience it and see our sadness and help us process our sadness, right? And so it's sadness without hardship. You can have sadness without hardship. The hardship is separation, right? So it really makes me think of, like, it's this whole reframing of how we have experienced what it is to be alive. Like, I would say that, and this is an awareness I came to not too many years ago, that that work itself is not hard. It's our resistance to doing the work that is hard. Procrastination, right? Think about when you procrastinate, you put it off and you put it off, and you might spend 2 days stressing about doing something. And then you do it and you're like, oh, it took me 30 minutes. Like the work was not hard. What was hard was our resistance to the work. Well, this is the same kind of thing, is that the suffering, right? The sadness is not hard. It is the isolation, the separation, the loneliness that surrounds the sadness that is hard. So they're saying that we heal, that we shift in this new way of being through unity, which is we are able to achieve because of this shift in consciousness, where we learn to trust each other, we learn to open to one another, we have this psychic connection to each other, where we become more empathic. Through this process, we open, we become vulnerable, we're willing to show ourselves, we see each other's truth, and in that experience, sadness is no longer suffering. Like wow, to me, that is wow. I just feel like I'm getting it. I don't know. I'm really excited about it. I hope you guys are too. Like, wow. Yeah, and you're saying this isn't saying we have to be in relationship again, does it? That answer is going to be different for every single person. I think relationship can be thought of in a million different ways. So you may choose to be in different types of relationship. It means that we need, wherever you feel, if you're avoiding something, then that is something to look at. If it's something that you're like out in the world and it's just not coming for you right now, like if you're like, oh, I would be open to it, but it's just, it's not where my focus is right now, then you probably don't have wounds there. But if it's a thing where you're like, oh, I don't want to do that again, then maybe that would be a place to look. So, and you're saying, does this new vibration help us find unity with people more aligned with us more easily? I believe so, yes. But I also believe that it's going to make those people who are less aligned, like if everybody is able to feel your feelings, then there's a root connection that I think it works its way, it weaves through everything. So you could potentially be with somebody who comes from a very different walk of life, very different understanding of truth and reality. And if they can see you and they can see the root of your feelings, then does it matter, right? Does it matter if they're really different? That's going to be something we'll have to explore and see when it happens. But to me, that makes sense. It makes sense that you could talk to anybody, right? And that that the new conversation is no longer culture and learning, it becomes feelings. And everybody has that. Like that's common, right? That's a common thread that unites all of us. So if that becomes the dialogue, then there's no separation between people. Yeah. And Shanta says, amazing. Yeah, I feel it too. Lindsay says, oh yes, procrastination is a big one. It would be so great to lay that down. Yeah. And you're saying, thank you for sharing about relationship. You're so welcome, Dashini. Yeah, it's definitely been a hard-won thing, but I am grateful for it. I really am. So, yeah, okay. So then they go on to say, suffering is the absence of soul and self. Separation is what creates hardship, the sense of loss and impermanence of self. What humanity knows of living is an experience formed under the umbrella of suffering and separation from what you are, from oneness, from the capacity to love each other. So this is what we have known thus far. This is what karma is all about, where we judge ourselves. It is that what we have known has been living in an experience under the umbrella of suffering and separation. So our whole experience has been about separation, about being unseen, about going through our feelings by ourselves, right? And then being separated from what we are, being separated from oneness, and being separated from the capacity to love one another. That has been our experience of life up until now. So think about that as what if you were to describe the shift in consciousness, what is humanity going through? We are going from that, right? We're going from the separation from what we are, from oneness, and from the capacity to love one another into, right, the opposite of that. We're going into unity, right? Unity with each other, unity with ourself, like wholeness inside, and the capacity to love each other. So that right there, in a nutshell, describes the shift in consciousness. And then all the ways in which that ripples out and changes our experience of what it is to be human, it cannot, there's not a big enough word for how impactful it will be. Yeah. Last paragraph, they say, in this new context of living, the great trials of life are opened to the self for the enjoyment of loving purposefully what you are. So they're really saying this is what it's going to be like. It won't be under the umbrella of suffering, because you are no longer in separation, that you can go through the trials of life. So in this new context of living, the great trials of life, so they still call them trials. In other words, they're saying it's still a riddle. We're still going to come in and we're still working through the riddles, right? Where we don't know what's going to happen. There'll be things that don't go well that we have to figure out. We'll still encounter ourselves. So it'll still be great trials, but they're open to the self for the enjoyment of loving purposefully who you are, what you are. Right? So it's a totally different context when you're going through things and you feel seen, loved, and understood in every experience, right? You're no longer wrong. That's the biggest thing. You are no longer wrong, right? There's no self-judgment in it. It's like imagine like running a 3-legged race and you don't really there's no shame if you don't win. It's just like, oh, look at that. Look what just happened, right? It's no longer like, oh, I'm, boy, am I wrong? Am I dumb? Am I whatever? Because that didn't, it's like, no, oh, it's like I did that. Oh, next time I'm going to do it this other way. Next time I'm going to try it differently. It becomes a very different experience. They go on to say, for the ability to see your soul and self as it opens and reveals its many convoluted ways of being. This is a reference back to the blossoming, right? To the indeterminate growth, where you grow endlessly without stopping, right? So in this new context of living, the great trials of life are open to the self for the enjoyment of loving purposefully what you are, for the ability to see your soul and self as it opens and reveals its many convoluted ways of being. You come to terms with what you are, and through this growth and endowment of living, you become brighter. So an endowment of living is important there, because they're really saying that this being given a life is a gift, that to come to earth is an enormous privilege and a gift, an endowment, right, of living. You become brighter through this experience. Then the last sentence here, they say, when solitude riddles you no more, the blessings of what you are encountered in the wholeness of communal understanding, and you are witnessed in your unfolding. So again, like references to and witnessed in your unfolding and that blossoming and your endless growth, you're seen, right? And yeah, just beautiful. So, and this solitude is no longer the issue. When solitude riddles you no more. And what I love about that, again, riddles is like 2 words. So riddles is like what they referred to earlier about it being like a puzzle that we have to work out. But when something is riddled, there's like holes in it. Like think about, like they say, like somebody like Swiss cheese is riddled with holes. So there's lots of them. And so when solitude riddles you no more, when solitude isn't making holes in you all over the place, right? Then the blessings of what you are encountered in the wholeness, right? No more holes, right? You're in wholeness of communal understanding. Yeah. And you are witnessed in your unfolding and the blossoming. So they're just so cool. They're so cool how they work with language and how they teach us. I just love it. I just love it. So yeah. And Sherry says, light bulb. Yeah, I know. Me too. So this message, in some ways it seems so simple and it's so related to things they've said in the past. But I feel like in this message, I personally had a very big aha with connecting things that I did not understand before. I didn't see how it all wove together. They've just been giving us piece by piece by piece. So you say, Shanta says, always on point. Seems like a personal message each time. Thank you. I love that. Just love it. And Linda says, solitude riddles you no more. Yep. Just beautiful. All right, you guys. Yeah, amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing this and all of these messages with me. I really am so grateful that we hold this energy together. You guys know, as you listen to these messages, there are frequencies passing through the messages. And so as we listen, we share and develop a greater understanding. It really helps me that through the process of talking with you about it, I come to a deeper understanding of the messages. So it's amazing to share it together. So please send us lots of love this weekend. Like I said, I am on retreat this weekend, and so I'm super excited for that. So have us in your thoughts and prayers. Sending you guys lots of love for a fantastic weekend, and I will see you next Friday live.